Well, hi, everybody. It's another Conversations with, and I'm delighted today to have with me Robin, my good friend from Southbridge, is here, and we're going to be talking about organ donations and that because Robin has been here before, and it's a good time to remind folks and talk about it. So, Robin, it's great to have you with us, and you have a guest.
Thanks for having us back. I did. I brought a guest, a different person with me today.
Who's the guest?
This is my friend Kathy, and she actually works for the New England Organ Donor Bank, right at the Organ Donor Bank Services
Terrific.
in Waltham.
Well, that's wonderful. It's in Waltham. Great.
Yes.
So you have a busy job.
Busy, yes.
You know, how do you like it out here? We have trees and everything out here.
I live out here.
Oh,
I
you
live
do?
in Charlton, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, well, she's home. Anyway, I'm thinking, you commute to Waltham?
I do sometimes, but we go all over New England.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you're traveling all the
Yeah.
time. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, Charlton's a great town.
It
we
is.
have trees. We have all kinds. We have beautiful. We have fresh
Yards.
air.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's wonderful. But let's talk about it because it's. And I'll tell you an interesting story. I had a tough winter, and I ended up in the hospital on a couple of occasions. And one of my visits to the hospital, I was up at ICU, and I went downstairs to a regular room for a couple of days before I left. And when I went downstairs, there was a gentleman in the room next to me in my room that I shared the room with that was ranting and raving and jumping up and down and all upset. He was in there for other reasons, but he was on the list for a kidney.
Oh,
And he had a situation that happened to him, and he was always all jumping up and down. And he and I chatted about it. What happened to him was that his sister is a school teacher in Wilbraham, and her sister put a thing in the school where the teachers meet, the little teachers' room, that her brother, etc., was looking for a donor. And one of the teachers said, "Boy, I'll do that." So she said, "Okay, fine, you got to call this number and tell him," and blah, blah, blah. Well, the sister called him back, and now he was beside himself. And I kept trying to calm him down. I said, you're going to be out the window pretty soon if you don't. But anyway, the woman, or this lady, this teacher called up, and the person who answered the phone said to her, now this is all what he was told.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a family member or a relative? And she said, no. She said, well, then you can't help him.
oh,
So, because he called his sister to find out whatever happened. And she said, oh, she was turned down. What do you mean she was turned down? And he says, well, she called up and they asked her if she was a relative or a family member. And she said no. And so he was ballistic. So that particular day that I was there, he called and talked to somebody at wherever it was. Must be your place in Waltham. And, of course, they said, no, we wouldn't have done that.
yeah, no. He probably called his, where he was listed, the hospital. But no, we do living donations for kidneys and sometimes for liver. You don't have to be a relative, but you have to be a match. So it
yeah.
may have been that she wasn't a match.
Yeah, well, but the fact is he was all upset. So the bottom line was he called them back and she was going to call back.
Right.
Because he said, even if you can donate it, it helps me. Even if I don't get yours,
Right.
it helps me because I got somebody to donate.
Right.
You know, so he was all upset. But I was sharing with him that I do programs with a woman from a nearby community. I said that, and we talk about being a donor.
Right.
So he was all intrigued about that. He said, really? You do a TV program? Yeah. I said, and we talk about it, and we urge people to do it. You know?
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
he was very much interested, but he did calm down a little bit once that girl called back, and
Yeah.
everything was going to be okay.
Oh, good.
You know, they were going to. I guess they have to check her and see what she can.
Yes.
Whatever they do.
Right.
In fact, why don't you talk about whatever they do? What happens when you do call?
So that's a different side, since that's the living donation. We deal with the donors on our side. So what we do is if somebody comes into the hospital and has a grim prognosis, they're not going to recover, then the hospital will call and give us that referral. Then we go to the hospital and we look at that patient's chart and see if they are a candidate for to be an organ donor. And then if they are, then eventually after testing and whatever the hospital has to do, then we would meet with the family and either let them know that their loved one is a registered donor, or if they're not a registered donor, then we would explain to them that this their loved one has the opportunity to help other people through donation.
So you don't actually get donors.
The hospital calls the donors into us, yes, and then we go out and see if they qualify to be an organ donor.
All right, so let's go through that. So somebody calls up now and says, "Hey, I'll donate," and so now the ball's in your court. So what
Right.
do you
So
do?
there are programs for that. That's not the program that I deal with. We deal with the patients that are either become brain dead or they're not going to recover. So we deal
So
with
you're the one that gets something. Your
Yes.
program is you get something to give.
right, exactly.
Okay. So that's what you do.
Yes.
Okay. So now, Robin, let's talk about your side. You're the one that wants them to give.
That's right. I live my life to the fullest every day because I received a deceased kidney. And I had a kidney transplant 9 years ago, and I just live my life thanking that donor for this grateful gift of life.
So how long? Let's get down and dirty. How long do you really have once somebody dies to get what you want out of them?
So there's two ways a person can donate. So if they're in the hospital and they're on a ventilator, a breathing machine, and they're on medications that are helping their heart still continue to beat, then we can evaluate them. And that process, from when we start the evaluation to when they actually go to the OR for the procurement, is about 48 to 72 hours. So that takes a little longer, but they're on the machines that are keeping their organs healthy. Yes.
Yeah.
Then there's another way that if a person has died, the hospital calls in that patient's name within an hour of death, and then they can be tissue donors. So they can do skin, bone, cornea, heart valves. We do.
But they can't do a kidney, for instance.
They can't do a kidney because they would already be deceased for a longer period of time.
So the problem is, for you have to get a kidney when they're really alive.
Right. Well, organ donation always takes place after death,
Yeah.
but they would still be on the machines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping their organs alive.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But organ donation always takes place after death.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works.
Yes.
And it's, the thing is, when you think about it, and I guess we have way too much television today. I mean, I grew up, we had 3 stations. Now they got 350,000.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the demise of our society, but that's neither here nor there. But I don't think there's a week goes by. And I basically watch the news. That's what I don't watch any of the shows. I get frustrated. You watch the promos during a football game, and people blowing people up and shooting
I know.
people and ripping women's clothes off, and then they wonder why the kids are cuckoo. They see these
Right.
foolish things. But anyway, I watch the news, basically. I get up at 4:30, watch the morning news. I don't believe in reality that there's a week goes by that there isn't one story or 2 stories about a story like Robin,
Right.
where this person was in real trouble, wasn't going to make it,
Right.
and were able to get a donor
Right.
and get a transplant and survived,
Right.
or is surviving. And so it's real.
It is real.
It's
real. There's over 115,000 people nationally waiting for a life-saving transplant. And there's over 5,000 just in the New England region.
Wow.
Yeah, and 22 people die every day waiting for their life-saving transplant.
So 22 don't make it.
Right.
So how do we, with you say 115,000 waiting? Mm-hmm. And we have what, 36 million? How many people live? 360 million live in this country. And so how do we reach those people? All right, let's put it this way. What is the thing that hold people back from being a donor?
There's a lot of myths that go around that people still believe. Answering your question, education is the biggest priority. And the New England Donor Services, which is our organ procurement organization in New England, we do a lot of education in different communities and shows like this. This is
Yep.
educating the public. So it's important to know that, that there are myths out there, and they're just that, they're myths. So one of the biggest ones is they didn't put it on their wallet, on their license, because if I got into an accident and went to the hospital, they would see I was an organ donor and wouldn't treat me because they just want my organs. And that's totally false. I was a nurse in the ER at UMass for a few years, and I can tell you I never once saw a license before I treated somebody.
No, I was going to say,
Yeah.
nobody comes in on a stretcher holding up their
Hey,
license.
right.
I mean, they want insurance. That's the
Right.
first question they
Right.
ask you, but they don't ask you for your license.
Right.
So it's a fear.
It's a fear, yes.
It's a fear that somebody would do them in,
Right.
to be kind, to get an organ.
To get an organ. Right. And that's totally false.
And another thing is religious beliefs. Now everybody,
Yes.
that's another big one, Dick. A lot of people believe that, our religion says that it's not okay to be an organ donor.
What religion says that?
Most every religion to this day doesn't say that. There is probably a few out there, but within this day, most religions
I was
now.
going to say I've been going to church. Well, I was 3 weeks old, and somebody dunked my head in a bucket of water, and said, "Okay, now you have a religion." And I've been going to church for all these years. And I was telling someone the other day, I've heard over 7,500 first and second readings. I've heard over 35 or 3,600 homilies and gospels. And I tell people all the time, never once did I ever hear, according to canon law, Jesus said.
Yeah.
Canon law? Oh, that's man-made laws.
Right.
And in this case, I can't ever recall once that any first, second reading or gospel, or Bible for that matter, says, "Thou shalt not give an organ."
Right. No, you're right.
And, a lot of, most religions, think of that as their final act of giving, is being an organ donor. So,
Now, are there any restrictions? I mean, are there certain people who can't, like for instance, certain people can't give blood,
right.
So I'm wondering if there's any restrictions for somebody to do that.
I believe, with the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not supposed to receive anybody else's blood, but we have had Jehovah's Witnesses that have donated.
Really?
So, yeah.
So there's no restrictions on
There's
anybody.
no restrictions, no.
If they want to donate, they can donate.
Yes.
So right now, age isn't a limit anymore. At one time, the age was a restriction. So a lot of people think we're too old now, we can't. But there's so many things that somebody can donate now between tissues and organs that there's no age restriction at all. So what we do, and Kathy and I do events to educate the public, we end up telling people you're not too old and everybody sign up. Even if you've had cancer and you're in remission or whatever it is that you're having for a sickness, you still sign up. So
You
our
still
biggest
sign
thing
up,
when we
right.
do the events is to tell people to sign up. So there's no reason, Dick, why somebody physically can't sign up. Because at the time of your passing, what they do is, Kathy's explained it a little bit, what they do is they always screen you, they always go through what they can use or not use. So everybody should sign up to be an organ donor, whether you do it on your driver's license, whether you do it on registerme.org and you're there for life, you never have to do it on your license again.
What's the biggest organ need?
The biggest organ need, I would say, is liver and kidneys. That is the most. But you can donate heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and intestine.
Wow.
Yeah. And some organs can be split. So if there's a pediatric patient in need of a liver, if the patient is under 45 years, the donor is under 45 years of age, that liver could be split and part of it could go to a pediatric patient. So, a full organ donor can help up to 8 people.
I saw a thing the other day on television. It's a company in Massachusetts now, and it's an aside to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But this new company, that he was, this guy was saying they were moving organs in coolers packed in ice, and he's developed some kind of a new container
I did see that.
You saw
yeah.
that, Joe?
Yep.
That the organ can be put in there,
Right.
and moved.
Well, we do use coolers for certain organs, and then there's pretty much a pump now for every organ. The liver can go on a pump. Kidneys have been going on pumps for years, and it kind of simulates being in the body still, so they're not, cold and,
they're not
and
just
just
laying
sitting
there,
there. And the heart, they have a pump for the heart, and lungs. So there's all these new inventions that are coming up to make organ donation even more successful.
You're a nurse, so you'll understand what I'm going to say. The one thing, well, there was a lot of things, but one of the things that I learned in the winter I want to forget was it is absolutely incredible the advances in medicine today.
Yes.
I mean, I had an aneurysm right in my groin, and I'm cut from here to here. And the doctor that did it is named Darren Klaus, and he was at the time chief of vascular surgery at Harvard Medical School, practiced it at Mass General, and they watched this for 5 or 6 years as it grew. Came time to do the operation, and my doctor called Dr. Klaus. Klaus says, how old is he? Well, he's 83. He says, I don't do anybody who's over 70.
Oh.
He can't survive the operation. The operation is so tedious because it's such a, he says, they didn't do this operation 2 years ago.
Wow.
Didn't do it 2 years ago. So my doctor said, you got to meet this guy. So I went down and saw Dr. Klaus, and he says, wow, you're amazing for your age. So he says, I want you to go upstairs and I want you to go to the lab, and I'm going to put you through some tests. And if you pass that test, then I think we can make this happen. So I went upstairs, and I tell people, I sat in a chair like this, big leather chair, and they put intravenous in, and there was 3 little connections. One was red, one was silver, and one was blue. I sat in that chair for an hour and 20 minutes. And the red one was me on a treadmill for 15 minutes. The silver one was nuclear, and it went into my heart, and it was me running a mile. And the last one was the blue one, that was me running up and down stairs. I mean, I never got out of the chair.
Right, right.
So anyway, by the time I finished that and went back to his office, he had the report. Well, it was successful. And the interesting thing is, there were 3 surgeons. And I said, well, why are we having 3 surgeons? He said, well, first of all, he said, one mistake and you're going home in a box. He said, that's the first thing. He said, the second problem is the operation's 5.5 hours, and it's so tedious that one doctor can't do it. So the first doctor just opened me. The second doctor cuts down to the artery. And then Dr. Klaus comes in, takes the artery, takes a piece out of it, cuts the bad piece out, and grafts a brand new piece in, puts it back in, and then they put you back together again. And so, and the funny part was, I saw his card, and they have their initials all.
Yes.
Well, on his, there was a bunch of initials. Then it said RPVI. So I said to him, I said, Dr. Klaus, what's RV? Oh, he says, I passed the test. And he laughed. Well, I looked it up, and it's Registered Physician for Vascular Intervention.
Oh,
He's one of 6 doctors in the country who do it,
wow. So you had one of the best.
to do that operation. But even when I was at UMass, I mean, they did a catheterization of my heart, to make sure it was fine. And that's how they know it wasn't just heart; it was his lungs. But the advances, and even when you think about it, taking something from one person, giving it to another person, and that person has a new leaf on life.
Right. It's amazing.
And so that whatever, kidney, liver, whatever it is, heart, goes to that other person, now has a whole new life.
Right.
Of its own, as at the same time it's keeping somebody else, gave them a new life.
Right.
extended theirs.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing.
So now let's talk about the matches because that's the big one. Mm-hmm. When you say it's got a match, what does that mean?
So for every donor that becomes a potential donor, we send a lot of blood on them because we test for a lot of things. We test for HIV, hepatitis, any of the hepatitis C, B, A, any of the infectious diseases we will test for. And then we send blood for tissue typing. So you need to be a match. You need to be a blood match, so your blood groups have to match, and your tissue typing has to match. And so once we get those results back, there's a national list. So, and that's the list that we have to go from. And whoever is the sickest comes up at the top, and then we just keep going down the list. If for some reason the first person on the list can't take the liver that we're offering, then we would go to the next person. And then we would just keep continuing down
So
the
you can
list.
find somebody who can use it.
Yep.
And then you have to fly them sometimes too.
Sometimes, if it's heart and lungs, they can only be out of the body for 4 to 6 hours. So
Oh,
they have to
wow.
be transplanted within that time.
Wow.
So they usually are flown to different places.
So you don't have much time.
No,
I mean, you think 4 to 6 hours, that's not a lot.
no.
That's not a lot.
That's why certain organs stay in certain areas. Like, really, you couldn't transplant a heart out in California.
California,
because,
you can't, would never,
No.
you know, the plane trip's 5.5 hours.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's out. So
Yeah.
you got to keep them locally. Well, that's interesting. So now, Robin, you are very, very, very outspoken on this. This is something that's really driven you,
It has.
and you keep the message out there, which, by the way, is good. I congratulate you for that. Let's talk about that. You can stand up and say, "I'm one of them."
That's right. I
Now,
can.
When
And
did
I'm-
when did you get yours?
I got mine in 2010. And I had been on dialysis for a long time, trying to live my life normally, but it slowed me down. I couldn't do
Yeah.
as much as I wanted to. I
No.
couldn't watch my nieces and nephews play outside too long. I get really tired. I was a swim instructor back then, and I was starting to still do my job, but feel really weaker
Yeah.
and weaker. And when I was offered the kidney, I had 100% turnaround. And now I just live my life giving back. Like one of my friends said to me the other day, she said, you don't live your life doing donor events, you live your life getting up every morning. And this was somebody that didn't know much about the subject. And I said, well, that's very true. Every day I get up and I thank God that I'm alive and my donor, because I had the gift of life and I do live my life every day. You know, you get ups and downs and medical problems and stuff, but you're still alive with that gift of life.
Well, you know, you mentioned that, and I every time I see people, I say, "How are you doing?" And I always say this. You know, something happened to you. Well, I'll say it to you three. Something happened to the three of us this morning. That's the absolute best thing that's going to happen to us all day. There is nothing that any one of us can do that will beat what happened to us this morning. We all woke up.
That's right.
Right?
Now, I had a fella say to me a couple of weeks ago, "Hey, wait a minute, Vaughn. I could hit the lottery this afternoon." And I put my arm around him, and I gave him a little hug. And I said, "Not if you don't wake up." So there was...
That's
when
very
you-
true.
And you know, and if you think I'm kidding you, folks, if you think I'm kidding you, here's what I want you to do. Pick up the paper and go to the obit section. And there's 8, 10, 12, 15 people who didn't make it last night, if you think I'm kidding
Right.
you.
Right.
And I think one of the tragedies, I think we all take it for granted. You know, I think we take that for granted. And I'm certainly sure you don't anymore.
I do not. I do not. I try to be as positive as I can with my life. Like I said, we always have things coming up, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's medical issues or personal issues.
Yeah.
But you still override them because I'm alive, you know. The most important thing is I'm alive and I'm here to celebrate my life by
Yeah.
promoting it on TV shows, health fairs, schools like Kathy does. She goes in and educates schools and talks to the schools, high schools and stuff. So as many times as we can get out there, that's what we like to do.
By the way, why does it have to be on a driver's license? That just occurred. Why?
It doesn't have to be. You can. That's one way to register is at the DMV, and it'll go on your license. You'll get a little heart. Otherwise, you can go to Donate Life New England. It's registerme.org, and you can register that way also.
Yeah, I mean, if they're worried about a driver's license,
Yeah, doesn't have to be.
give them a card that says it.
Yeah.
You know, and that solves that problem.
Right.
So the whole thing is fear. That why people wouldn't do it.
Right.
They're afraid or they're scared. And, you know, one of the great tragedies of everybody's life is a lot of people live their life in fear. You know, they're so worried about things.
Right.
That, you know, I have great friends who worry about things that they're not even scheduled to happen for 6 months.
Right.
I says, what are you worried about it now for? You know, get through the day.
Right.
You know, there's a great book. It's a little tiny book, and I used to have. I bought a whole case of them because I loved it so much. And I used to give it to people. And it's called The Precious Present. And people think precious present means you're going to get a gift.
Yeah.
Well, all it was when you get the last page of the book, the precious present is live in the present. Live for today. First of all, tomorrow hasn't come yet.
Right.
You know, we gotta get through today. Yesterday is gone forever.
Yep.
Anything you did or said yesterday won't matter.
Right.
You can't change it. It's gone, done, over. You know, live with it. But today is the day, and it's an amazing situation. But folks, if you're out there and I know you're watching, you know, I want you to carefully think about this. Just think about the fact that when your life is finished or finishing, you can turn around and give somebody else the opportunity to live just a little bit longer, you know, with a simple donation that you don't need anymore.
Right.
You can't use.
Right.
You know, it's that simple. I mean,
Right.
it really comes down to the easy part. Is it's a situation where you're at a point in time where the party's over,
Right.
and yet you can turn around and let somebody else have a party a little longer, you know. And putting them in those terms, and there's nothing to fear, because you won't even know it.
Right.
You won't even know they've done it, you know, when you think about it.
Right.
And so how simple it really is, you know.
Right.
Now, when you have a donor like that and you know they're at their life is coming to an end, what do you have to have certain doctors and people prepared to do those removals?
Yes. So what happens is once the patient is either declared brain dead on wherever they are, say if they're at UMass, they're declared brain dead by the UMass doctors. And then once we go to the OR, whoever we have allocated the organs, so say we allocated the liver to UMass, it would be UMass's surgeons that come and procure the liver. If the heart is going to Brigham and Women's, a team from Brigham and Women's would come to UMass and procure the heart.
Yeah.
So
they would have somebody waiting for it.
And their patient is waiting for it. They've already gotten the call, say, come into the hospital, we potentially have a heart for you.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine getting that call?
Yeah, but, you know, think about it. What a, wow.
Right.
You know, it's called, I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to make it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, listen, it was delightful having you both here. Robin, once again, it's always great to see you.
Thank you very much for having us.
And I'm so glad that you're doing well.
Thank you.
And you're still with us, and that's good news. And it was great to see you and to
Yes,
hear the different side of the whole aspect and how it actually works. You know, because maybe, hopefully, somebody out there now says, well, you know what? That's not a bad deal.
Right.
Now, who do they have to call? What do they have to do? Someone's out there, they want to do it. What did they do? Call who?
You can also be a living donor. I just want to stress that enough too, because there is people out there that want to choose to donate a kidney, because the average person
But who do
only
they have to
needs
call?
one
You
kidney.
got to tell them who to call.
You call the New England Organ Donor Bank, right?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
And that must be what, online?
And we can, yes, and we can refer them to whoever they need to get in touch
So
with
they
to
call
be
it New
worked
England
up.
Donor Bank.
New England Donor Services, yeah.
Good, there you go. And there you are, folks. That's another Conversations With.